Hey everyone, my name is Dan Rupert and this is my presentation on China. So we all know about China. It's a very well-known country. We hear about it a lot in the United States. We hear about its booming economy, its communist government. We hear about the one-child policy. We know about its ancient culture, and we all know about its adorable panda bears. However, there are a lot of parts about China that aren't covered by the media as much. And some of these aren't great things. Every country has its issues, and of course China does as well. China's biggest issue, at least in my opinion, is its rapid, unsustainable growth. So what this is although growth is a good thing, and it's a good thing that China is growing too fast for its own good, meaning that they're producing too much than they can handle. And China's desire to grow and to increase its GDP without worrying about its side effects is really going to harm China in the long run, and it's already showing. A few issues that this has caused is regional imbalances, a corrupt government, and pollution. So the first issue, regional imbalances. When you think about China, you think about cities like Hong Kong or Beijing, where we see bright lights, fancy cars, high technology. They're very wealthy, they have very high education. It's a very successful society. However, this isn't how most of China is. Most of China lives in inland towns where globalization hasn't really affected it, and therefore they're still living in the past. They're relying on farming and manual labor to make a living. They're very poor, and they aren't educated. And this is an issue because, as you see in this quote, if a child has to drop out of school because their parents can't pay for them anymore, they're not going to be able to get a job, like a real good job, if they're not educated. And therefore, there's just going to be a never-ending loop of these kids growing up in inland towns not being able to get out of them. Whereas the people in coastal cities who live at ports and are exposed to the world, they have a much better chance of being successful. So the corrupt government is obviously an issue of China. We all know about China's Communist Party, the People's Republic of China. And so this party's parliament is called China's National People's Congress. And as you would expect, it's mostly made up of politicians, but there are also a number of billionaires who sit on the Congress. And this poses a problem because picture a situation where the Congress has to make a decision that might benefit the rich but harm the poor. These billionaires are most certainly going to want to benefit the rich because they are rich. They want to benefit themselves. And it's just a real mixture of politics and business, and that's something that you do not want to see in a government. Likewise, the majority of businesses are owned by the government. In fact, in the 2015 Fortune 500 list, the top 12 Chinese companies are owned by the government, which means that the government is controlling the majority of its economy, which is not good because they can do whatever they want. And this is to the dismay of a lot of the citizens. When we learned about China, we watched a documentary called Hong Kong Rising, and you can see how the people of Hong Kong were having protests, which were illegal, and they just wanted to have more of a say in how the country is run, and the government doesn't allow this, which means that no progress will be made, which is not a good sign for China. So another issue in China is its pollution, and it's easy to understand why this became a problem. China values GDP growth over everything, and therefore they're producing more and more. They're working their factories harder and harder, and the more you use your factory, the more pollution it is going to give out. So China consumes nearly half of the world's coal, which is unbelievable how much, it makes sense that they're producing a lot and they need coal, but it's the entire world we're talking about here, and this is one country using half of the world's coal. Now, another fact that is really disturbing is that China's air pollution contributes to about 1.2 million premature deaths a year in the country, which is ridiculous. It's a huge country, they have a huge population, but 1.2 million is a lot of people who are dying because of the increase in production when the country can't handle it. It's a choice between staying number one as the highest producer in the world and killing your own people. And this country seems to be siding with continuing to be number one, which shows how much influence globalism has over the country, that they want the world to know they are number one in production, and they don't really care what they have to do to stay number one. So after I ranted about China's issues for about 6 minutes or so, it's time to really take a step back and understand that China is still a beautiful country. Not every area of China is covered in dead fish and people wearing like gas masks. There are beautiful parts of China. You can see the sunset down here. I love to spend a night there. That looks fantastic. So this is a 7-day itinerary of a trip to China. So on day one, first things first, you got to get to China. So a flight from Philadelphia to Beijing is going to cost $937. It's a little over a 16-hour flight, which is quite long, but there's only one way to get there. Once in China, you're going to need a rental car for your first 3 days in Beijing. This is going to cost you a total of $429. The rate is $143 per day. And the car which you'll be driving is a Citroen Grand C4 Picasso, which is that nice car down here. Foreign car, I've never heard of it, but it'll get the job done. I'm sure it gets great gas mileage. The hotel you'll be staying at in Beijing is called the Beijing Shiguang Great Wall Boutique Inn for a rate of $117 a night. It's located just 1 mile away from the Great Wall of China, so it's a great location. Now, once you're settled down in the hotel, after a long flight, you're going to be getting hungry, and therefore it's time for your first taste of Chinese cuisine. You can get 2 duck burgers at the Dong Duck for just $6.32. So you'll see that China, their prices, especially on food, are very low, which is nice. We're going to save money here. After a nice dinner, you're going to head back to the hotel and rest up for the next day, which will be quite busy, as you will be touring the Great Wall of China. First things first, you got to fuel up for that. So you will be getting a complimentary breakfast at the hotel. Again, saving money as much as we can here. We want to spend our money on exciting things like tours. We don't want to spend our money on breakfast. We can get breakfast anywhere we want. So we're just going to use the complimentary breakfast before going to tour the Great Wall of China for $35, which seems expensive when you see how cheap everything else is in China. But it's well worth it because it's a guided tour. You can see everything you need to see, and also the tour guide is a historian. So you'll be learning about how the wall was constructed by the Qin and the Ming dynasties. Construction began in 210 BCE by the Qin dynasties, and the point of the wall was to show how China was united, that it was no longer a bunch of different tribes, it was one united country. However, most of the construction was completed by the Ming dynasty between the years of 1368 and 1664. After touring the Great Wall of China, you're going to be quite hungry. So you head across the street to the old Beijing Zhaojing Noodle King, which rhymes very nicely, where you can get a meal of noodles and beef for $5.46 before returning to the hotel for a good night's sleep. So the next day, you're going to once again have a complimentary breakfast before heading to the Imperial Palace, also known as the Forbidden City. Now, the reason that is known as the Forbidden City is because back in the day when 24 emperors from the Ming and Qing dynasties resided here, it was very difficult to get in. The only way you were allowed into the palace was if you had special permission from the emperor. Therefore, it was forbidden for most citizens to get into the palace, which is ironic because now you can take a tour of the palace for $8.62. But this place is very historical. in 1911 Chinese Revolution, actually a good portion of the palace was destroyed, but it was rebuilt and it is kept in great shape by the Chinese government for people to come see the culture of China. After touring the palace, you can head over and get dinner at Bao Wan Jiaozo Wu, where you can get dumplings for $5.33 before returning to the hotel for the night. Next day, you're going to have your last complimentary breakfast from this hotel before checking out and taking a bullet train to Xi'an. Now, the reason you're taking a bullet train here instead of driving is because there's a 10-hour car ride from Beijing to Xi'an, and we don't have time for that. We need to see as much of China as we possibly can. So this bullet train will take only 4 hours. It'll cost just $76, and we'll get to Xi'an in no time. Once in Xi'an, we'll check into the Angzana Xi'an Lintong Hotel, which is just 4 miles away from the Terracotta Army, which is where we'll be spending our day. This Terracotta Army we can take a tour of for $21, and I think this is the coolest part of the trip. These things, it's just so cool to me, the fact that they built thousands of these in detail soldiers out of terracotta, and they found these in the tomb of Shi Hongdi, who was the first emperor of China. He was the one who started construction on the Great Wall of China. And they built these to protect him in the afterlife, which is really cool. It shows how much the afterlife meant to these ancient Chinese and how loyal they were to their emperor, that they built. You can just picture how much time and energy it must have taken to construct all of these. Now, after touring the Terracotta Army, you can head over to the Old Xi'an restaurant, where you can get a meal for just $7 before returning to the hotel for a good night's sleep. Next day, you're going to be getting a complimentary breakfast at this hotel before taking another bullet train ride to Chengdu. Up here you can see a picture of the bullet train. You can see how fast it's going. They couldn't even catch it on camera. But I wish that we had these in the United States. That looks so cool. And it costs only $39 to get from Xi'an to Chengdu. Instead of a 7-hour drive, it'll be a 3-hour train ride. Once in Chengdu, you can check into the Crown Plaza Chengdu Panda Garden, which for just a rate of $71 a night. And today we'll be spending the day at the Panda Breeding and Research Center, which only costs $8.33. Here you'll be able to see wild pandas that were raised as infants by the workers of the center. Therefore, they are very comfortable with humans. And although they're wild, they are free to leave as they wish. They tend to stay around the people, and it's very easy to get an up-close and personal experience with these pandas, which is really cool because pandas are like the most quintessential Chinese animal. When you think about animals in China, you think about pandas. So it's a great way to check out pandas on the trip. After hanging out with the pandas, you can head over to the Zhao Tan Duohua restaurant, where you can get noodles for $5.42 before returning to the hotel. Day 6, we're going to fly to Shanghai, but not before getting a breakfast at the hotel. This time it's not complimentary, but it's still under $10, so it's still alright. We're flying to Shanghai for $201 because it's a 2-hour flight, but it would be an over 10-hour bullet train ride. So you can just see how large China is, that even on the bullet train it would take over 10 hours. And the reason that we're going to Shanghai is to get a look at the more modern side of China. We looked at a lot of historical parts in the first couple days of the trip. Now it's time to really check out the modern China and what we think of when we think of China's economy. So we check into the hotel, the Holiday Inn, Shanghai Hongqiao West, for $60 a night. We're going to be going back to the United States in a couple days. You might as well get used to it while you can. And the first thing we're going to be checking out is the World Financial Center, which is this tall building on the right. And it's home to many international business corporations. I think of this as similar to the World Trade Center, where it's anything that you need in a business is in this building. There's even a luxury hotel for people who are on business trips to stay at while they're in China for a meeting. After checking out the World Financial Center and getting a great view of the city from the top, we can head across the street to the Shanghai Chiban Ting restaurant, where we can get dinner for just $6. That night, it's a good idea to check out the Bund, which is this strip of buildings down here, which are made up of different architectural styles from all over the world. And it's a very beautiful sight at night. You can see all the lit up buildings. And it really just shows how China has taken aspects of all over the world and tried to include that in this strip of buildings to show how they are one with the rest of the world. So after this, we can head back to the hotel. Get ready for our last day in China. Our last complimentary breakfast. We've taken advantage of those a lot this trip, and for good reason, because next we'll be going to the Nanjing Road, which is the hub of commerce. It's known as the busiest street in Shanghai. I think this is like similar to like Times Square in New York City, where if you go there, you're not leaving without spending some money. So it's a good thing we've been using these complimentary breakfasts, because I'm sure you'll buy some type of souvenir from Nanjing Road. I find interesting is that you can actually see McDonald's signs in these pictures, which just shows how like one with the rest of the world China is. At least the coastal cities are, where like an American country is like forefront in China, along with all these like companies in Chinese lettering that I don't understand. So after checking out Nanjing Road for a couple hours, we might head to get lunch and a quick coffee boost from the Starbucks Reserve Roastery, which is the biggest Starbucks in the entire world. Gotta check that out. Before taking a taxi to Shanghai Pudong International Airport for a flight back to Philly for $322. It's funny how it's a lot cheaper going back to America than it is leaving America. So the total cost of the entire trip, $2,715.73. Not too bad. It's good that we took advantage of those breakfasts. So these are the references that I used throughout my paper and my presentation. It's the same sources. Hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you for watching.